Hello and welcome to Solved or Unsolved. This is a podcast where we talk about true crimes. I'm your host, Brent. If you want to know more about me and more about the podcast, simply go to solvedorunsolved.com. There you can find out everything you want to know about the podcast. You can also listen to the podcast. All the episodes are there at the website. You can also listen iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, just about anywhere that podcasts are available, you can listen to the show there. If you enjoy it, please tell your family and friends. I really would appreciate that. This is the 12th episode of the podcast, and today we're talking about a serial killer, Edmund Kemper. This episode, we're going to talk about serial killer Edmund Kemper. Kemper was a different person. Kemper killed 10 people. He killed his grandparents, his mother, her friend, and 6 female hitchhikers. Now, in the early 1970s in Santa Cruz, California, there were body parts that were being found in the woods, coming up on the beach out of the Pacific Ocean. And young females were being murdered, raped, and dismembered. And the weird thing is that the killer was right under the nose of the police the whole time, and they had no clue. According to famous FBI profilers John Douglas and Robert Resler, there are 10 traits, and any of these 10 traits can indicate that someone could possibly be a serial killer. Well, Edmund Kemper, he had all 10 of the signs, which is very rare. And even as a baby, Kemper was born December the 18th of 1948 in Burbank, California. And even as a baby and as a boy, Kemper was huge. He eventually grew to 300 pounds and was 6'9". So this is a huge guy that stood out wherever he went. And he had a horrible childhood. At age 9, his parents divorced, and Edmund was left with his 2 sisters and his mother. His mother's name was Clarnell. She was constantly on him, ridiculing for his size and mocked this. It said he had a weirdo personality. She's constantly telling him that no woman will ever love you. You're just too big. You're awkward. Just constantly on him. And after a while, he taught himself to hate. He learned to hate everyone, and especially women. At the age of 10, Kemper buried his cat alive. And once it died, he dug it up, decapitated it, and displayed it on a spike. Now, this was sort of what you would call his first trophy. This is sort of where he gets started. He's already got all this hate in him. His parents divorced, which I know that's no excuse. That's more the common today than not. But this is the early 70s. It's sort of not didn't happen a whole lot then. And his mom's constantly on him. He just got all this hate in him. And actually, at one point, his mother locked him in the basement, fearing that he would rape his sister. Now, you got some things going on. If a mom suspects that, today she should go get some help. She should call people. Not sure what the protocol was back then, but you should be telling somebody. That's just, of course, a huge sign. At age 15, Kemper tried to reconcile with his father, but his father rejected him, and he really didn't want to be with his mom anymore, so he went to live with his grandparents on a 17-acre ranch out in California. Well, he already has all this hate and rage in him. He's beginning to be really big. Remember, he ends up being 6'9", 300 pounds. He's 15 years old, really, really big kid. Something happens, and his grandfather went to town, so Kemper shot his grandmother in the head and 2 more times in the body. Then he just stabbed her numerous times. Now remember, he's 15 years old. So he killed his grandmother. She's in the house, bleeding. She's dead. And his grandfather pulled up to the house in the driveway. So as soon as he got out of the truck, Kemper shot him in the head. And he later said that he shot him because he didn't want his grandfather to see what he had done to his grandmother. Kemper, at this point, his grandfather's laying outside the truck, dead in the driveway. Grandmother, they brutally killed her. She's in the house, dead. What's Kemper do? He called his mom and told her what he had done. And she was just very... the mother was different. They had a horrible relationship. She told him to call the police and just tell them what had happened. So Kemper called the police, and he just sat and waited for them on the front porch till they showed up. Of course, when they get there, they see what he had done, these brutal murders. So they arrested him, and he was placed in a state mental hospital for evaluation. And he was released just 5 years later at the age of 20. So he kills both of his grandparents, spends 5 years in a mental institution, and now he's free. He's 20 years old, has killed 2 people, and he is completely free. Now, Kemper had always wanted to be a police officer. Now, you know, how weird is that? But his weight and his height at that time wasn't within the requirements. Back then, I think they had a lot of height and weight requirements. I'm not really sure. I know now there's not really things such as that. There's physical agility tests. There are things such as that. It doesn't matter what size you are if you can successfully complete any of requirements in that each department has and able to be considered for hire. But that's what he wanted to be. But instead, he took a job as a construction worker. That's basically all the work he could find to do. But he would hang out at a local bar called the Jury Room. This was a place where police would hang out. I know back in the 70s, I've read a lot, especially in larger towns. You had police officers that sort of had their bar where they would go after work and they would hang out. Like each neighborhood had different precincts for police officers, and they were really tight-knit. Even off duty, they'd go hang out at these bars together. I know that sounds like a horrible idea, but that's what took place. It may even take place today. I live in a smaller town, so I'm not really sure about that part. But these guys knew him. He's this big, huge guy hanging out with them. They said he had a good personality, was easy to get along with. They actually considered him a friend. So he hangs out, and when cops get together, they tend to tell cop stories. They tend to tell, oh, you'll never believe what happened today. This idiot did this and this and this. So Kemper's sitting there with them. He feels like he's one of them. They're telling stories. They trust him. They actually, some of them consider him a friend. So Kemper's back living at his mom's, and he's got this construction job. He's saving his money. Finally has enough money. He wants to move out of his mom's house. It's about 20 miles away in Santa Cruz, California. And here's what Kemper did. He knows what he wants to do. He hates women, especially women. So over about a 3-year period after he moves out, I mean, he's on his own, can do what he wants. He confessed that he had picked up over 150 female hitchhikers. Now, this is the 70s in California. Hitchhiking was very, very popular. You have young kids, they don't, you just out of high school or just out of college, they don't have a job. California, never been there, heard it's a really different place in the 70s, a lot of drug use, things such as that. But Kemper did this. And what he did it to taught him how to gain the trust of these hitchhikers, noticing their strengths, their weaknesses. It was a study session, I guess. He would pick one up, and I'm sure the first few, he was horrible, probably didn't say anything, just watched how they acted. But then he got where he would, he taught himself to learn how to have a conversation with them, to learn how for them to start trusting him, to relate to him because he's this big, massive man. Remember, 6'9", 300 pounds. And he was picking up females only. So he really taught himself a lot here. He gained their trust. He learned how to talk to them, what they wanted to talk about. He really put his work in. And on May the 7th of 1972, he had his car. He rigged his car so that the passenger door couldn't be opened from the inside. Now, one way thing he may have gotten from his cop buddies, you know, a police car, the back doors will not open from the inside. Yeah, I'm sure he saw this and they talked about it, and he rigged his own car so that the passenger side seat could not open from the inside. So Kemper's ready. He's got his car rigged up where the female won't be able to get out. He knows how to pick these female hitchhikers up. He knows how to gain their trust. So he's really, really done his homework. Well, he spotted two young girls, 18 years old, Marianne Pesci and Anita Muchesi. And these girls were hitchhiking. So Kemper's going and he sees these girls hitchhiking. Like, here's my chance. So Kemper picked up the girls and he drove them to a deserted road. He put one of the girls in the trunk of the car and put a plastic bag over Mary's head to suffocate her. She fought back, so Kemper said the heck with this bag, and he pulled out his knife and just started stabbing her repeatedly. So he didn't want them together. He wasn't that confident yet to do his killing, so he put, he put Anita in the trunk of the car. So him and Mary are standing outside. He's talking to her. He puts a plastic bag over her head. Of course, she's fighting. He may not have anticipated this. She's fighting, maybe about to get away. So he just pulled out his knife and started stabbing her. So she's laying there dead. Then he opened up the trunk of the car, looked at Anita, and just got the knife and slit her throat. Maybe he said, okay, I'm just going to do this quick. I thought I would enjoy the long part of the killing. That wasn't working. Maybe it wasn't how he anticipated, so he just cut them with knives. He then took both of the bodies back to his apartment. Remember, he lives by himself. He had sex with the corpses. Then he dismembered the bodies, putting the body parts in plastic bags and disposing of the bags throughout the nearby mountains that were there where he lived. So, you know, you've got a killer. You've got a person, what is it called, necrophiliac, who is having sex with corpses. And then he is butchering, dismembering the bodies, putting them in plastic bags, and disposing of them throughout the mountains. And I guess it was about 3 months later, after the murders, some hitchhikers found Mary's head in the mountains. Now, in the mountains, you know, you have all kinds of wildlife, scavengers looking for food. I'm sure 3 months is a long time that some scavengers got it. He probably had buried them, got it out of the ground, was exposed the skull, the head, and some hitchhikers found it. So this is the first sign that the police say, uh-oh, what do we got going here? We have a female who just found her head. Still have no clue about Kemper. No signs whatsoever. And one night in September, Kemper offered a ride to a 15-year-old girl, Aiko Ku. Kemper drove her, again, to a remote location. And this is what, I mean, it just makes sense. This is what most all serial killers do. Go to isolated locations where they can do what they want. They don't have to worry about screams. They don't have to worry about people being around. They can concentrate on what they're wanting to do. But Kemper, remember, he practiced with 150 more. He's talking to the girl. She's getting nervous. It's just this isolated place. But he told her, I'm not going to kill you. He just wanted to talk to her. That's what he keeps telling her. I'm sure that's the things he used to do when he used to practice. But Kemper then gets out of the car and he accidentally locked the doors. I guess there was a button on the car, accidentally locked the doors. And the girl, Ku, made just a fatal error. And she unlocked the doors and let Kemper back in. Now, maybe at this point, she trusted him. I don't know what story he had told her about going out to this deserted place, but he had to have gained her trust for her to unlock those doors. If not, I'm assuming the keys were in the car, because if not, Kemper would have opened the door with the keys. So you have this 15-year-old girl. She's in the car. This huge man gets out. The doors are locked. He's trying to get in. I'm assuming she could have driven off. Maybe he got so good at talking and people trusting him that she said, oh, he's not going to do anything. He seems like a good guy. I'm going to let him back in. Well, he gets back in the car and somehow, not really sure, he rendered her unconscious. He went back to the plastic bag over her head. And he kept it long enough this time that she actually passed out. Then, as she's passed out, he raped her. And then he strangled her to death with her own scarf. So, remember the first time he tried to do the plastic bag, it didn't work, so he just pulled out his knife. Well, evidently he's getting better at this, because he had the plastic bag, rendered her unconscious, had sex with the body unconscious, then he got her own scarf and strangled her to death. She's not fighting at this point, she's unconscious. He then takes the body back to his apartment. He dismembered the body and, again, scattered the remains of the body throughout the mountains. Well, Kemper had mandatory psychological evaluations that he had to go do from the deal of him killing his grandparents. So the next day, he had an appointment with a psychiatrist. He kept the appointment while the head of Koo was in the trunk of his car. So this guy, the night before, killed, raped, dismembered the body, kept the head for a while as a trophy, pulls up to the psychiatrist's office. Oh, I'm going to go in here and talk to the psychiatrist, and body in his trunk. Just didn't think anything about it. At this point, Kemper runs out of money. He has nowhere else to go. I guess he's going to the bar a lot, spending all his money. He doesn't have any money anymore, so he has nowhere else to go. So he moves back in with his mother. But this can't go good. He already has a hatred for women. She's on him all the time, but he has nowhere else to go, so moves back in his mother. Well, he continues his picking up his hitchhikers. He picked up a Cindy Shaw. He again drove her to a remote location. At this point, he has a gun. I guess he's thinking, this strangling thing, I thought I'd like it. It's taking too long. I'm not comfortable with it. Maybe I can occur an injury from this, scratches, something such as that. So he gets a gun and revealed a gun to her. He told her to get in the trunk. She got in the trunk and he just shot her once in the head. So I guess he's like, I'm just going to get this killing thing over, because I think he's liking the after the killing better. He took the body to his mother's home. Now, I don't know if the mother was at home or if he snuck the body in at night, but he took this dead body to his mother's home. He had sex with the corpse on his bed in his mother's home. Again, he cut the body up. He buried her head in his mother's garden. He then threw the other body parts into the Pacific Ocean. So he's changed here a little bit. Maybe he found out that the head was found in the mountains earlier. So maybe he's thinking, okay, if I throw these into the Pacific Ocean, cut up the bodies, throw them in, maybe they won't be found. I don't know the thinking process at this point, but here he is again. He's making killing easier. He's using a gun now, not as personal. He's still having sex with the corpse and dismembering the bodies. Now, a few days later, just a few days after this, he picked up two hitchhikers, Rosalind Thorpe and Allison Liu. Kemper again drove them to a secluded area. He shot both of them in the head. That's his MO now. It's easier for him because he just wants the dead part. Remember, he just wants what's after. Took both of the bodies back to his mother's house where he had sex with the corpses, dismembered the bodies, and this time he scattered the body parts over 3 different counties. So I think he's getting worried at this point. Wait a minute, these bodies are going to start showing up. The numbers are getting larger. The head was already found. I'm not sure about the Pacific Ocean. Maybe they may show it back up on the beach. So now he's driving. He put the bodies in 3 different counties, really, really spreading them out at this point. He's actually getting more cautious. He's making the death part easier on him because, again, in my opinion, he's more excited about the after death than he is the actual killing. Now, Kemper went to a gun shop and he purchased a .44 Magnum handgun. I guess he had the one gun, but I guess he wanted a big .44 Magnum to make the killing even easier, to make it even quicker. Then they did a background check and noticed that he had committed a double suicide, but said nothing since the deaths were sealed by the courts. Now, I don't understand how they found out about the double homicides when he was 15, when it was sealed by the court. That didn't make any sense to me. But the local police found out that this gun seller went in and sold the gun, but then they called the police. Hey, I just sold a gun and I got some information he had committed a double murder. So the police found out and they decided that he couldn't own the weapon because he was a convicted felon. So the police went to his house, and remember, he's buddies with these guys. They're all buddies. They know each other. They sit around and talk a bunch of bull. They tell stories. Went to his house and told him that they were there, that they needed to confiscate his weapon. Well, he agreed because they knew him and he knew the officers. And he's like, okay, I just want a gun for protection. No big deal. I don't need it. I'm a big guy. So he gave him the gun. Don't know the gun laws in California at that time. Of course, you couldn't legally purchase that now. But in Kemper's mind, he thought that, wait a minute, maybe the police know something and they were getting close to catching him. But remember, at this point, only thing that the police know is the head they found in the mountains months and months and months ago. The police still have no clue about Kemper, but he's thinking, wait a minute, he's getting a little paranoid. Wait a minute, they knew I bought the gun, so the gun guy told on me. They now know that I am a convicted felon, that I committed 2 murders. They may be putting this together, and they may be getting ready to close in on me. So he's getting paranoid at this point. And on April 21st of 1973, Kemper just walked into his mother's bedroom while she was asleep and beat her to death with a claw hammer. I don't know if the rage of the hatred for his mother finally came to a head. I don't know if he's thinking, wait a minute, this is sort of the end. The police they're on me. I'm going to get caught. The person who started all this, the most hatred I have for is my mother. So I must finish the job. I must get rid of her. I don't know. It sounds like that could possibly be. So he beat his mother to death with a hammer. And then he called his mother's friend, Sally Hallett. He asked her to come over to his mother's house. This woman knew him since he was a small kid. She was best friends with his mom. And when she got there, she knew him, liked him. He walked toward her and to give her a big hug. He put his arm under her neck, hugging her, and he choked her to death. Now, I don't know what problem he had with her, but it seems like some final things he had been wanting to do for a long time because he thinks the police are about to get him. So Kemper killed his mother, killed her best friend. They're laying there in his mother's home, dead. Kemper left. He's on the run. He drove to Colorado. He thought the police were after him, but he still didn't know. They still didn't know that he had killed anyone. They have no clue. So Kemper, he's 1,500 miles away in Colorado. And after about 3 days, he pulled up to a phone booth in, I think it's Pueblo, Colorado, I believe. And he called one of his friends at the Santa Cruz Police Department, and he told them that he had killed his mom and her friend Sally. Well, the guy didn't believe him and actually hung up on him. He called back and talked to a different person, answered a person I don't think that knew him. And he said, I killed my mother and her friend. They're in her house, gave the address, go check. So the police go to the address, they find the bodies in the house, and the Pueblo police arrested Kemper. So the Santa Cruz police go to pick him up in Colorado, and on the way back, Kemper told them in detail about all of the killings. Now, I have a theory about this. I think he thought they knew beforehand, so he killed the mother and the friend. Then he ran, and then maybe he decided, wait a minute, this running, I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to go ahead and get this out. I'm going to tell it. Well, the buddies that know him come pick him up. They got a 1,500-mile ride back to Santa Cruz. So he's sitting there and he's telling them in detail about everything. Maybe he think, oh, this is my buddies. I need to get this. I need to tell somebody. He's telling them. Of course, you know that the police are sitting there. Like, oh my goodness! It probably can't believe it. They drink beer with this guy. They hang out with this guy. They tell stories with this guy, and he's telling these horrible stories of murder, sex with corpses, dismemberment of bodies, but told them all. The police, they had to feel like absolute idiots. I mean, this is a serial killer. We hung out with him, and I'm sure there were some clues. There had to be. Maybe they just missed them all. In September of 1973, Kemper was found guilty on 8 counts of murder, and he was sentenced to life without parole. Even to this day, information I could find, Kemper is still in prison. He should be around 70, 72, 73, somewhere like that at this point. Don't know about his health, but Kemper has spent the rest of his life in prison. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, please tell your family and friends to listen.